This is Lehigh Valley Political Pulse. I'm Tom Shortell. Each week, political scientist Chris Borick joins me to discuss the latest scientific-based research related to public opinion. We dive into the local, state, and national levels and what it all means for you. Claims of election fraud have popped up in recent years, whether it's questions raised about mail-in ballots or efforts to overturn the 2020 election. It's a message voters have been bombarded with. From surveys you've conducted and reviewed, Chris, how concerned is the American public over election security?
So right now, when we look at polls, we see considerable amount of distrust with election systems, concern about election systems, that really wasn't part of American public attitudes and beliefs for much of contemporary years in the U.S.
And what specifically are voters worried about?
So we've over the last 5 years at the Institute, for example, asked lots of questions on this. This has been one of our key areas because we think it's so important. And you've seen areas like mail ballots, which, of course, a little bit of context, right, came to Pennsylvania in a large-scale form after Act 77 in 2019. That allowed no excuse mail balloting. It used to be just absentee ballots, which was a real small portion of the electorate. And once that law was passed, we've seen Pennsylvanians increasingly turn to this. A large segment of the population turned to the use of mail ballots. In 2020, it started to get used in the midst of a pandemic. But since, we've seen it in other elections. And once again, there's signs that it'll be a significant part of this election. The public, when we ask, do they have trust in mail ballots, are deeply divided on this, and it lines up really neatly with our partisan identification, with Republicans strongly concerned and lacking confidence in the system to be fair and accurate, and Democrats overwhelmingly saying it is, and independents largely saying it is too. So it's really fallen into a divide that matches with our partisan politics and reflects what you hear often from varied elected officials across partisan divides.
In Pennsylvania, mail-in ballots aren't processed entirely until after polls close. So they go through, the envelopes are open, they're entered into the machines, but we don't have a count until after 8 o'clock. How is that impacting trust in election results?
I think this is an enormous issue in Pennsylvania right now and affects this broader trust discussion we had. In Pennsylvania, there is no pre-canvassing. In other words, when mail ballots come in, largely they get logged in by the counties and put aside until Election Day. You can't do much with them other than kind of get them ready to go. And then you start opening them on Election Day and start processing them. But that's going to be delayed in terms of getting results. That's going to create, in all likelihood, because of the disparate use of mail ballots by Democrats and Republicans, Democrats use it, Republicans largely don't, that when the results come in, Election Day results will lean red, Republican. As mail ballots come in, they will lean blue, and that will change the dynamic like it did in 2020. There's no kind of, looking at that and saying, well, that doesn't make sense. It makes total sense. What happens, though, however, it feeds the narrative, and this is one issue I think is a major concern in Pennsylvania. Why have we not changed that and allowed those results to be processed quicker, at least get them ready quicker so you could do it? I think it's largely based on political partisan means. In other words, some people like that narrative to say, look what's happening. Oh, wow, we're ahead now. We're falling behind. What's happening? Why are these votes coming in now? The reality is they're coming in now because they're mail ballots that we didn't start counting to Election Day. They happen because of all the things we've talked about being more democratic in terms of their nature, capital D democratic votes.
Is trust returning? Is it getting worse? How does this compare to where we were, say, 4 years ago?
We've done it now, right? Pennsylvanians have experienced it. They've used it and may feel more comfortable with it. But on the whole, it looks probably more like it did in late 2020 than it did in early 2020 in terms of where the public is at.
That's political scientist Chris Borick. This has been Lehigh Valley Political Pulse. I'm Tom Shortell. For an extended version of this interview, visit LehighValleyNews.com